Well, now time at 10:30 to introduce the man of the moment, always on a Wednesday night. Well, he shares it with Hayden Donnell, of course. It is Colin Peacock. G'day, Colin.
Hi, Mark. How are you going?
I'm going well. And a big weekend of sport. Now, I did start the evening by saying, surprise, surprise. I said, there'll be talk of the election. And then I had a look at your list of subjects, and it's all about sport, for goodness sake. That's good.
Well, it is at the top. I thought we might get to the election a little bit later, but I'm trying to give people a bit of a break because, as we've been saying, I think the media bear part of the blame for this going too early. It feels like election day would be almost upon us with the vibe and the sort of cumulative effort that everyone's been putting in and all the drip-fed policies and all that stuff. Not all the media's fault, of course, but to think we're still all these weeks away.
Yes, indeed.
So I've put it down the order.
A big weekend in sport, so we're going to talk sport, New Zealand sport, and as you say, it wasn't a particularly successful one, was it?
It was an extremely successful one for anybody playing a New Zealand side in international competition. So to recap, for anyone who wasn't keeping score, the All Blacks lost their first ever Rugby World Cup pool game on Saturday morning. Then later in the day, the Warriors lost their first finals match against the Panthers. Israel Adesanya dethroned. He's a middleweight, isn't he, in the UFC? I don't follow that all that closely, but he lost.
Me neither.
Yeah, and then Sunday night, the Black Caps went and lost to England by about 80 runs, just under. So that's clearly not close. And the fact, I guess it was a shortened one-day international as well means not good. So particularly tough one also, not just for fans, but Sky TV. They'd hyped it as a big weekend of sport. And on Monday morning, they put out a statement about the viewing figures because they obviously like to trumpet those when they get a good audience. But they tried to put a bit of a brave face on it. It says, it was an incredible weekend of sport viewing with the All Blacks opening World Cup match, the Warriors, and so much more. While the results didn't necessarily fall in our favour, which is one way of putting it, that didn't deter New Zealanders watching across Sky Open, which is the new name of Prime TV, and Sky Sport Now. So you have to be a bit careful how you phrase these things. So one way of reading that is like, thanks for tuning in. Sorry, it was miserable all the way through if you're a patriotic sports fan, but we got the numbers, so good for us.
Yeah, you're a bunch of losers.
But I don't think that's what they meant.
No, I'm sure not. And I don't think there's any doubt that we'll be watching the next Warriors game and the next All Blacks game and the next Black Caps game for that matter as well. But I guess the All Blacks defeat was the biggest story for the weekend from a media point of view. Yeah,
for sure. That first ever pool defeat, first match in the World Cup, obviously keenly anticipated, and the one that kicked off the entire tournament. So, yes, big deal. Colin, just, in the All Blacks' defence, they're taking on France, who've been pipped at the post a number of times, thanks to New Zealand in one instance anyway, by 1 point. It's their home tournament in Paris with all their fans. They're not going to lose that game. They just would have had too much passion. It would have been a travesty if they had, I think. Yeah, well, I think it just upped the stakes for everything, because we last spoke, or the last time the All Blacks had just had that record ever defeat against the Springboks last time we spoke on Midweek Mediawatch. And that was obviously just a warm-up match, so maybe that explains how the vibe was a bit different. But the commentary team and the Sky Studio, they were almost kind of laughing about it. Even Jeff Wilson kind of throwing his hands there. Carlton Arna was kind of laughing, but I guess nothing on the line there. But this time, weirdly, I thought it would be a much more serious sort of vibe and a lot more kind of worry, albeit that it's not an elimination or anything like that in the first match. But I wondered how some of those old school diehard fans among the Sky subscribers, might have felt, because there were a lot of jokes about the Warriors. The Warriors can rescue our weekend, people shouting out, up the wires and all that stuff. I think there might have been some of the more old school ones at home not all that happy about it, because I seem to remember, I don't follow rugby that closely, but All Black matches that went the wrong way in the years gone by, they had grumpy old Murray Deaker and people like that in the studios, and they were looking in the post-mortem to find out whose socks really needed to be pulled up, finding scapegoats for things. It was all very serious. And I
always remember Terry Wogan. Remember Terry Wogan, the wonderful BBC broadcaster? I went to that match in 2007 at Cardiff where the All Blacks lost to France.
Oh, you were there?
I was there.
Ooh.
And I remember the next day driving back in complete depression, of course, as we all were. And Terry Wogan's gag was, New Zealand, the land of the long black cloud.
Well, when I think the Irish beat New Zealand the first time. I remember listening to an Irish sports podcast I quite like, and they played a mashup of Irish commentary, and there was I think the RTE commentator on the final whistle who said, and whatever the score was, and he said, oh, New Zealand belongs to Ireland. I think that is a bold call. But I was watching after the France won that first match in the weekend, I watched, for some reason on the Sky website, a documentary I didn't know existed. It was called 2011, The Weight of a Nation. And it was all about how Graham Henry and Steve Hansen and that squad lost in that match that you attended, that fateful game in 2007, then got reappointed unexpectedly and had to go through this 4-year thing. And then Graham Henry is talking about as that tense match, they won by a point, and it was 8-7 in the end, the 2011 final. And he's saying, look, one bounce of the ball, this could all go wrong. We could lose again. This is going through his mind as the game is ticking down. And he says, I remember thinking, if this happens again, like 2007, can I stay in the country? He said, can Raywin take this? His wife. He said, can we even stay in? He was literally thinking, as the match was in progress, if this goes the wrong way, I'm going to have to go and find somewhere else to live. So it's all a bit much. But while I'm picking on the current commentary team, if I can, there's one bit of commentary that people seized on, which I was kind of surprised to hear. So this is just before half-time in the match on Saturday, and it really, really did not date well.
The All Blacks, this French outfit, they're really fatigued.
They're out on their feet, Mills. They're out on their feet.
Yeah, understand.
The All Blacks have continued to push.
Clear gap.
Great work through the middle on the edges, but they're starting to battle. We watch the All Blacks get up here and compete.
3+.
Now, I think that's the voice of Jeff Wilson, who was sidelined. I think it's Mills Millionaire in the commentary box he's talking to. Both of them saying, they're out on their feet there.
The French, that is.
Yeah, the French. And this is as the All Blacks were pressing for a try. I think it was where Cody Taylor biffed it out accidentally straight into touch, and that was that. But they were pretty confident that going to half-time, the All Blacks were on top. The French were out on their feet. But don't know about you, but after a little rest at half-time and a little slice of orange, the French looked pretty good to me.
Yeah, they might have had a Pernod or two or something just to set them up, pastis.
Yeah, probably not these days, but they were fine.
Yes, but they did look on top at that point. But then again, similar to 2007, when they were not well in front, but they had a reasonable lead at half time, and then it all turned to custard.
Yeah, which they seem to have forgotten in the Sky commentary box. So I think they took their lead from what Jeff Wilson said there. And after the match, after they switched back to the studio, this is how in the studio Laura McGoldrick, the anchor, and Israel Dagg picked up when it was all over.
A man who's never lost a game to France, Israel Dagg. I'd love your initial thoughts on that, because holy, I did not see that coming. Certainly not after that first half. Even at half-time, I had the confidence. I thought, our fitness would see us through, but a lot of errors.
Oh, where do we start, honey? That second half was just totally opposite to what we put in the first half.
So, but like you were saying, Mark, there in 2007, as you were there to witness it, the French came roaring back in that second half, gambled. I mean, in this one, it was more controlled than that, as a lot of the commentators, the pundits who know far more than me were saying it seemed like they played almost the All Blacks game, keep it tight, overwhelm teams as it gets towards the late stage. So I'm just kind of amazed that the Sky team would be sitting there going, didn't think that was going to happen, when history and recent form would tell you that was at the very least a distinct possibility. So I think they might have sold their viewers a bit short there, and I'm sure there were people not happy at all with that level of analysis who were watching on TV.
I must say though, I think Laura McGoldrick has done a great job. She's brought a real freshness to the presentation at Sky with her coverage and hosting of the studio element of the show. So
and actually, having said that, it is also in tune with other coverage of things like football, which I follow more closely. So they had also, for that match, the other in-studio guest was Honey Hirame Smiler from the Ferns. So definitely more women on the commentary team. That's something that's been mirrored by British football coverage and across Europe. Perhaps not in Spain. And Spanish football seems to have issues with that at the admin and on TV.
It's been resolved now, though.
We'll see. Bit to go there, but it is interesting, and that indeed is a change that you can see on your screen as part of modern sport.
So Sky said they were happy with the ratings of that game. Broadcasters need good results, of course, to keep the audiences coming back through the big tournaments.
Yeah, and I think the classic of this one is 2 World Cups ago. England hosted it in 2015. They got knocked out in the pool play by Wales, which I think their neighbour, which made it a bit more gruesome for the fans. But for the commercial network ITV, they invested a lot for them to put it on in prime time on their channels, cost them the opportunity cost of not screening other highly commercial stuff. They really suffered from England being knocked out of that. And here it's also interesting because Sky Open, we mentioned, is the new name of Sky TV, because of course Sky owns what was Prime, and they have putting quite a few games on live and free to air from the tournament. They did it with the FIFA Women's World Cup as well recently, and ended the Men's FIFA World Cup, which was the year before, the one in Qatar. And it's a big step for them to do this. It must be a fine balance, because you want people to subscribe and pay, but having that online channel is a bit of a shop window for it as well. Also means you're doing a good thing for the public, so it's kind of staves off any kind of regulatory impulse for the government criticism that they're hogging the rights or enjoying a bit of a sport monopoly, stuff like that. Fine calculation, but them, and also the original content they've made, the programs about the World Cup and so on, they're putting those on. So interesting to see that shift of putting a bit more on free-to-air TV for non-subscribers than they would have in the past.
And looking at that extra programming, what have they done for the World Cup?
Haven't watched it all, but one that did take a look, it was Lost in France. This is a series where ex-All Blacks kind of tour the country and bump into people. Well, it looks kind of spontaneous, obviously it isn't. I didn't have high hopes for it when I read a Stuff review of one of the first episodes. It said they had Carlos Spencer looking around one district of Paris and going, oh yeah, this boulevard looks a bit like the main drag in Levin. But it's actually pretty good. He's quite funny, and a lot of these players have spent a lot of time in France and played some of their rugby there and were quite knowledgeable. Not bad, and I think better than Taika Waititi's Tour de Rugby, which has been made for the new New Zealand Rugby online channel NZR Plus. Not as good.
Not good?
No, I mean, Taika Waititi called it, with tongue-in-cheek, the world's least informative travel show, but actually having watched a couple, that's fair.
He was right.
Yeah, if you like Taika's style of sort of casually mispronouncing things and goofing around, you might find it funny. It's just, I guess, not for me, but it's a bit loose, and a lot of effort, a lot of money's gone into it, but yeah, not a great watch, really.
Well, Taika also made the news. He was commenting on people giving the All Blacks a hard time over that defeat to France on Saturday.
Yeah, so News Hub at 6 made news out of this. This actually came in a report from the Europe correspondent Lisette Raymer.
A plea from a man who knows a thing or two about the pressure of pleasing the masses.
It's easy to sit on the couch and judge someone. It's like, sorry, but are you an All Black? Have you been an All Black? No, so shut up.
Prominent Kiwis telling rugby fans not to criticise the All Blacks and shut up. That may rub people up the wrong way.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a risky thing to do, especially, the media know there's heaps of engagement to be had in, angsting about the All Blacks and who might be to blame and their underperformance and what's gone wrong. But also, Lisette Raymer didn't mention that new show. That news piece was a bit of a puff piece for him and the show, and it's all part of the rugby union's own platform, that NZR Plus enterprise. So effectively, Taika Waititi there is, doing the PR for the All Blacks employers and the keepers of the brand. He also talked about, I think this is also risky for any Kiwi public figure, he talked about tall poppy syndrome at the end of that report. And I'll play a bit of it now, but the other thing to listen out for, it took me by surprise, but was a rather interesting sort of unscripted little brief comment by the News Hub presenter that night, Oreni Kaipara, when they switched back to the studio. Have a listen.
You know what Kiwis are like. You can never please us. You can never please people back home. That's what I've learned. And tall poppy syndrome is the real deal. And but I do not engage in that because no matter what, I support the All Blacks, win or lose.
With Captain Kane out for now, Waititi is backing Ardie Savea to see the boys through.
Who's stronger, Four or Ardie Savea?
Ardie.
No question.
No question. Wellington. All the muscle men come from Wellington.
Ready to watch the All Blacks throw down the hammer. In Paris, Lisette Raymer, News Hub.
I don't know.
So there is, we'll switch back to Stu. Already Kaupara had this sort of frown on her face. Yeah, I don't know. And I'm wondering, was she reacting there to his claim that Wellingtonians were the hard men of New Zealand, or was it that tall poppy? Because I don't think people who are tall poppies, really, and prominent citizens talking about tall poppy syndrome and this failing of the rest of us who are not tall poppies. I don't think that goes down particularly well. So I just wonder quite what, because you don't usually hear the news anchors or see them react at all. So, yeah, interesting that. But to me, that's how I felt about that whole report on taiko. I don't know, not for me.
Yeah, nah, I would say.
yeah, true enough.
So, one thing that must have changed the RWC, or the Rugby World Cup mood in France, of course, this awful earthquake in Morocco, and of course even Libya today with the flooding. Oh my goodness, there are millions of Moroccan-born and descended people living in France.
Yes, yeah, so that surely has had an effect on the mood. I kind of hesitate to do this because any disaster that happens that's not in a heavily kind of mediated country or part of the Anglosphere or, well covered by British, American TV networks, we don't, media outlets, we don't tend to hear as much about. But, Morocco is not all that far from Europe. It is connected to France with that colonial era as well. I think we would be hearing a lot more about it if it was within Europe. But it's interesting, I've been watching the Al Jazeera coverage. That channel is free to view on Freeview. I don't know what the licensing arrangement is. Just before we came on air, I was watching, they've got an English reporter, Jonah Hull, who's been doing incredible and very, sounds a bit crass, but very televisual, very produced reports that are quite eye-catching. And obviously this is a tragedy above all other things, but he is creating some brilliant reporting, and it's a shame we're not seeing that on our TV networks. If it was possible to screen that or crossing to their reporters. They've got a lot of reporters who speak Arabic or French, which is both spoken there, even the Berber languages in the Atlas Mountains there where it struck. I wish we were seeing a bit more of that because it is better. And I don't mean to pick on TVNZ here, but last night, just happened to be watching One News, 20 minutes into the news was the first time they mentioned Morocco and the Libya floods, which at that point had just begun. Straight after it, stories on those two tragedies was a report of pretty much equivalent length, about 2 minutes long, all about that single American caver who was rescued in Turkey. And obviously that happened before the floods hit. It's just a coincidence. But the juxtaposition of those two things, one American rescued from underground whilst, people were trapped underground and in buildings in Morocco, a bit of an awful contrast. But
in defence of that, the only thing I'd say, I think I totally agree with you, but the nature of the rescue being such a tricky thing to do.
Yeah, of course, they are different stories, and comparing the two things is just wrong. To do that whataboutery of it's not a sort of calculus of suffering or whatever. And one thing was underway before the others, different stories. But it's just awkward. You see like a hastily assembled rescue team, people from all countries, jackets of international locations at the scene in Turkey. And, these are people who are not able to be, in Morocco, or could be scrambled, could clearly be used there. Just the juxtaposition of it was.
And the father in Morocco having to use his hands to dig out the soil to try and find his family beneath, just tragic. That's just horrible, Now, dogs on a plane and also dogs on buses and trains. This got our audience going a bit the other night as well.
I'll bet. Yeah. Because do you remember on Midweek Mediawatch a while back, you were talking to Hayden about a scoop in Wellington's paper, The Post, which said the mayor had a dog in the office and shouldn't have, and she had to not stop taking it to work in the end. I remember you talking about it. And
you thought, fair enough too, she shouldn't take a bloody dog to work.
Yeah, I'm afraid that I have unpopular views about pets, which we don't need to go into too much. But one day I think I might be vindicated. But it was something to bear in mind. Yeah, Stuff did a story. After realise, so their headline: couple want refund after being sat next to snorting, farting dog on Singapore Airlines flight. So this story has gone well and truly across the media here and overseas. But on the local Wellington morning show here on ZB, Nick Mills, the local host, had this harrowing account of that 13-hour flight from one of that couple that had to suffer this. This was Warren Press.
So every now and again, the dog would emit a smell, and he'd get this card out and fan the dog. And that was all good while he was awake. But when he went to sleep, we were just about gassed out.
I'm sorry, I'm laughing.
Laugh.
I'm sorry. I'm trying not to laugh, but it's almost comical, isn't it?
And then later on, the dog coughed and I felt this glob hit my leg. And I said to my wife, I think we're out of here.
Yeah, I would be too. So, Mark, that story's gone well and truly global. In fact, I looked it up. It was on a Fox News website, which does that thing where it auto plays a video as soon as you go to it. And they've just done what news sites often do, is just attach some tangentially related video. Yeah. So this was actually one of, recently a flight to the Philippines had terrible turbulence and people shot cell phone video on the inside of the plane of people absolutely screaming and freaking out. So I'm reading their headline, couple livid after sitting next to farting dog on a 13-hour flight. And then this video kicks in, people absolutely screaming, terrified, and I'm thinking, hang on, this can't be in reaction to the dog. But I think some of the best journalism here, Britain's worst tabloid, The Daily Star, they had to fit it in one of those side columns. We can only use short words. Their headline was, Dog Fart Jet Hell. So it's like some sort of Wordle puzzle gone wrong.
Yeah. Well, knowing what dogs are capable of, I kind of understand. But what the hell's a dog? Apart from a guide dog, what's a dog doing sitting in a seat next to you anyway, for goodness sake? I don't agree with that. But there we go. Doesn't sound too pleasant. Obviously a horrible long-haul flight for those people, but not the same as a short bus or a train trip in Auckland, is it?
No, I mean, people like me certainly wouldn't like being sat next to a dog, whatever, but I guess the universe doesn't revolve around my feelings, so that's fine. But another thing is I thought, it just reminded me of something I saw on The Project on TV3, because this is an extra burden for bus drivers. They're going to have to deal with people getting on with their dogs and then having to deal maybe with people like me that want to have a tanty about it. If the pets behave, it's fine, but if they don't, whatever. So I thought, it's a rough one on the drivers, no one ever thinks of them. But coincidentally, last Wednesday, just before you did Midweek with Hayden, I watched Guy Williams on TV3's The Project, and they were doing a bit about whether people still say thank you to the driver and whether that's going in and out of fashion. But they had this really striking interview with an Auckland transport bus driver. His name was Vave Masalia. He was sat at the wheel of his bus while being interviewed. It must be a bit awkward having a cat, but he was so chilled out. He was very cool, answering all the questions. At one point, Mark Richardson, the project host, asked him, do you get angry at people that, goof around, press the button, but then don't get off the bus?
Anger? One or two times, you just ignore it. Third time, it's kind of like... does somebody want to get off the bus? It's like, it's not a game.
Vave, you are so zen for a bus driver. I can imagine that's a high-pressure stress position. I love how level you are.
Yeah, it is very high stress level, but at the same time, I love driving.
He does sound a great character.
Yeah, he was really cool, and you don't often see that. So, seeing as they had him in and he was a good talker, they kept them on for quite a while. I think it would be really awkward having a camera right in your face while you're actually at the wheel of the vehicle you usually drive. I think that would have been quite unsettling, but he handled it. Give him his own show, I say.
Always thank the driver. Yeah, always thank the driver. Absolutely. Now, what the heck's happening in Dunedin? The DCC, the Dunedin City Council. The ruction's there. So
this is the latest place where there's local government dramas, I guess. Seem to be settling things in Gore, but now it's going off in Dunedin. So this is the deputy mayor has decided she doesn't want to be deputy mayor anymore, can't get on with the actual mayor, who was a new mayor elected, Jules Radich, last time round. But the way the media has reported this kind of got me interested. So the Stuff newspaper chain doesn't have a paper in Dunedin, but its correspondent Hamish McNeely is very active. And he also goes to the trouble of doing a weekly news digest of his own, a thing he calls the Mish, named after him, Hamish, I guess, on the Substack platform for people who subscribe. And it's really good. And sometimes he lifts the curtain a little on how stories came to be. So usually he puts that out on Wednesdays. But he had to report late on Wednesday night, about 10 p.m, the news happened that Sophie Barker had resigned as the deputy. So he reported that for Stuff, then put out a special little Substack thing, which I got immediately on the email, which was actually the first point that I saw it. And then he did a follow-up on Tuesday edition of his personal newsletter thing after a council meeting discussing it all. So good on you.
So the councillor who made the offending racist remark, I think it was at a restaurant, wasn't it? Was Hamish all over that story as well?
Yeah, see, this is what caused it. It was this guy, Barry Williams. He's the chair of the Strathtyre Community Board, so a member of the council. So this is actually some time ago. Yes, he'd made a remark to someone in a pub worker in Middlemarch. And of course, the ODT, I should say, the Otago Daily Times, I haven't mentioned, they covered this story as well, pretty fully. And in fact, when they had an independent investigation into a code of conduct thing for this councillor, Barry Williams, about what to do with it, but it was all discussed behind closed doors. And in Hamish's newsletter, The Mish, he said a special thanks to my tipster who told me to keep an eye on a code of conduct hearing being held behind closed doors, and he'd just seen it on the agenda, so followed up on it. That one of Sophie Barker's objections that the mayor had tried to play down Barry Williams' conduct. He gave an interview with RNZ where he said, we think we've sorted it out, it's not that big a deal. But so him giving interviews to the media and saying things that she and possibly other councillors didn't agree to became a part of the issue. And, Hamish kind of explained it quite well in his newsletter and in his stuff reporting.
Was the council trying to keep a lid on it, do you think? Keep it out of the media eye by going in camera?
Well, possibly they might have had to reveal all that anyway after they, had the confidential meetings in which people would speak more frankly. That might be the reason. I'm not quite sure of the whole procedure. But interestingly, having revealed it, Hamish revealed, he's had a bit of pushback on this from local people, and so did RNZ's Tess Brunton. She went up to Middlemarch, talked to people, found quite a bit of support for Barry Williams. But Hamish said, I've had particularly one guy said, I've had this from an Auckland businessman called John. Yes, I looked you up, John. Have you got no news to generate? The Mayor of Auckland is spot on, referring to all you as drongo media. I don't understand how a community board chair calling a hotel worker a stupid black bee ... and a packed pub is not news. I guess I'm a drongo. But another thing from that John doesn't seem to get is the double negative, because the way he wrote that there doesn't quite make sense. There are too many knots in his sentence.
Another Dunedin publication caught your eye this week as well, I see.
The Otago University weekly student mag critic, Te Arohi. Its politics or election issue was out this weekend. Some good stuff in it. Good mix of, actual serious info, but also some quite funny stuff. A very funny election bingo card, which students might put to use for games of their own design later on maybe. But also this thing that I looked at, a party election hoarding by numbers thing. You could design your own hoarding. It's so funny. And I can't now not look at an actual election hoarding and not see their design of just how basic they are. So really good. And by the way, you used a double negative there. So John, if you're listening, that's how you
that's
actually
what you mean.
do it. Yeah.
And we've finally got round to the election campaign latest. Is it worth starting?
Yeah, I'll do it briefly. So what it was that, last time you spoke to Hayden, I think Chris Hipkins had been kind of monstered by Jack Tamer, but with some very awkward questions. He was at it again this week. And he also asked a pretty searching question of Te Māori Party co-leader Rawiri Waititi. He'd asked him about whether the national government might scrap a new Māori health authority, and he was rather surprised by this reply.
That's the problem with those types of parties, national and ACT, who want to see Māori die 7 to 10 years early, who want to see incarceration. Absolutely. I think
we have to contest that.
Well, you can contest that, but you tell me where the data changes.
If you can point to any statement from any MP who says they want Māori to die earlier.
It's in their actions. And so not wanting to change the current system that has failed Māori for 183 years.
Yeah, so that statement that those political parties want Māori to die had to be challenged. And then in the end, they went further. They actually gave the two parties, ACT and National, the right of reply on that. I don't think they really needed to do it, because I think Jack Tamer did a good job of pulling them up and making it clear that that was really hyperbole from Rawiri Waititi there.